Hello. So there's a fan going that I'm cooking rice. So I'm not sure how it's going to affect the quality of the sound. I'm also eating. Um, so you might want to add subtitles. Um, so the last two videos I talked a lot about striving and kind of the truth that is reality beyond what we can define with conditioned perspectives. And a conditioned perspective is consciousness that is based off of limited understanding, in which things are split into kind of dualistic oppositions. In my experience, this perspective is incomplete. Um, I don't think is real. And I talked about in the second video how realizing the nature of striving is the highest wisdom, or realizing the nature of striving leads to the highest wisdom, or is the highest wisdom. The highest wisdom is that attitude of an attitude of striving is unfounded in reason, meaning that it does not do what it tells us it does, or what we think it does. And furthermore, it does not and cannot bring about fulfillment. And I'm talking about fulfillment in the fullest sense, which, if we're being precise, there's only one kind of fulfillment, and that is complete release from conditioned views. And so when we deeply realize the ineffectivity of striving, we abandon striving as an attitude, as a technique, as an approach to living and to trying to acquire what we want and need. And I think when we let go of striving, we realize that which is beyond conditioned perspective, which is beyond the individual, which is beyond our identities. And this to me is what is real. And this to me is something that's really, really far away from what people normally experience. And I think it's also really uncommon in people that are pursuing spirituality to really be directly conscious of it. And I think there's a lot of steps that can happen and that are part of realizing this. There's a lot of important things that we can experience as we study and reflect on striving and on truth and on awakening. And so I wanted to talk about in this video some of the main things that lead to that realization that striving is unfounded and that it should be abandoned, and that something else, some deeper truth, is a reasonable and perhaps the only reasonable path to take. So I think I'm really going to go in the polar opposite of what I've been talking about. I'm going to go to down to earth, which is how people regularly feel and experience day to day, and how we can go from there to awakening spiritually and moving towards realization of ultimate truth. There's a lot of stuff we can talk about. So we'll just see how far we get in the next 25, 30 minutes. So I think if you really want to wake up, you have to really want to wake up. Or you just have to wake up, even if you don't want to. The way we change is like nature changing in the seasons. Spring just comes and plants grow and flower and produce fruit. There's a lot of plants and all over, and sometimes the plant of awakening happens to grow in your life, in your being, in your experience, and there's really nothing you can do about it. It's just happening. Just like how you could see someone and fall in love with them or really dislike them. It's kind of out of your control. It just happens. And this movement inside of you is constantly changing, rearranging, deepening, expanding. Our outer experience kind of reflects what's happening within us. And this inner subtle movement is what leads to awakening. And when it gets triggered in the right ways, we start to wake up in different ways, to different degrees. And we can wake up to what lies beyond conditioned perspectives. It's super complicated, it's super vast, and it's also just super organic and requires like no thought at all. It's just a process. It's just unfolding right now. And so our experience as human beings, we may want to wake up or think we want to wake up. And I think that our desire has to reflect a certain degree of inner movement for us to actually begin waking up. The inner natural flow of things has to be going in that direction for it to actually consciously manifest or really manifest in form in our lives. Um, so we could think we want to when we really just like the idea or whatever. But if there isn't that internal movement, then it won't happen because that movement's going somewhere else, and it's just not going to happen. So if we truly want to wake up, and there's a true inner movement in that direction, um, certain things will start to happen. I think I might want to backtrack a little bit. Um, so there's this kind of inner movement that accompanies everything and also accompanies the process of waking up. And it's a change of that inner movement blossoming within us, the inner movement that changes our perspectives and our consciousness, and a lot of other things. And so I said that you have to authentically desire that. And so I don't want people to think, well, I don't have that desire and I can't get it. Um, or I have to be just lucky to be able to wake up. At the same time, on the other hand, I think through technique, through precise technique, we can explore our consciousness and we can explore our psyche and we can explore reality and we can unlock doors that wake us up through a technical approach. Um, Anyone can do this. Again, you have to have the desire to technically apply yourself in this way. But you could do this without having as much desire as just really being passionate about it and just having it kind of naturally happen. You could recognize that it's a healthy thing to wake up, or that it could be a healthy thing for you to wake up. But you maybe not have this kind of spontaneous awakening, and you may want to do something about that. You may want to start meditating or start getting in touch with your feelings more, or talk to people who have more experiences like that. Um, but there's a lot of different doors you can take to wake up, and it's all about finding what works for you and what's available to you. Um, I think regardless of the path that you take, or the means that you take, or the techniques that you apply, there's the same fundamental awakening process that happens that is the same for every single human being because our inner structure is the same. Um, this process can unfold in an infinite number of ways, but the fundamental structures, the fundamental components, the fundamental movement is the same. And the inner space is the same. to the extent that it seems like each human being is actually the external reflection of an inner human being. And there's only one. There's like a cosmic being. And we think we're separate, but there's really this internal structure to the universe that human beings are, that exist on. And that every part of our being, every part of our physiology, every part of our psychology, every part of, you can call our soul or our spiritual natures, is a form or an outer reflection of inner structures or of an inner structure. And it's the same, it's from my experience, each human being has the exact same inner space, the exact same inner chambers. And the outer forms are what are different. You could say the outer forms are different. The types on these dimensions are different, but the inner things are the same. And the process of awakening is moving deeper and deeper within these inner structures, um, to, I think, what you could say is ultimate realization. And so I think what I can say about how this starts, or how it progresses, or how this process works, um, I think can apply is universally. So I think what is required to wake up, I think for everyone, is a sense of the spiritual, um, and I think spiritual activity. And when we sense the spiritual, we sense that there's something greater that we wish to understand, that we wish to have in our lives, that we wish to realize. And so I think having a spiritual sense, sensing spirituality, or sensing what you could call spirit, I think is fundamental, and I think that's kind of the first step. Um, and if you don't have that, you're not interested in what I'm saying. You're not really interested in what I'm saying. Um, so if you have that, then you start to feel kind of a subtle drive to to do things differently, um, to change your orientation in life. And from this comes every great thing, or every anything, any part of the spiritual path. You can call it a spiritual path or not, doesn't matter. Um, and in my experience, what happens, what this is doing, when you have the sense of spirit, it starts awakening kind of deeper feelings. Just kind of, you could say, spiritual feelings. And these feelings are really powerful. Even if we don't experience them, and we're not like having intense feelings, I'm saying they're powerful in the way that they they can shape us, and the way they can have priority in our lives. And so I think when we start to have these feelings, it's like a spiritual chakra or something is turning on. And then we start getting all these inklings and these ideas and these feelings. And we're just like, man, what's going on? Like, oh man, this I gotta do something. I gotta see something. Something's happening. It's like this, something's happening. And and that can take us in so many directions. But it's really when we start to listen to these feelings and really receive them, the more we receive them consciously and sincerely, um, the more they fill us, and the more that they fit into our lives, the more we allow them to fit in our lives, and the more they just do, the more they just become a part of us, the more they just naturally deepen, the more direction they give us, and the more sense we have of where they're headed. And so I think having a sense of this kind of spiritual vibe, and kind of understanding what it means for us personally and how it fits into our life and maybe what it's telling us about our life, I think that's a good place to start, because there's no there's no one way or many ways, set ways that we can awaken. There's, you know, tons of people that are Zen Buddhists, and you could say, well, there's a way of Zen, but each one of them has a unique way of practicing Zen. And if you really step back, each person is doing their unique spiritual, form of meditation, and it's unique to who they are as an individual being. And you can't get around that. You can't force yourself to fit into a set pattern. You have to fit into it as an individual, as an organism. And so I think having a basic sense of the spirit, and then what it's starting to tell us about our lives, and about, you know, what is it telling us about what we're doing that feels good? What is it telling us about what we're doing that doesn't feel good? And what is it telling us about what we're doing that we want to change, or that we're not doing, that we want to add into our lives? Um, what is it telling us? You know, is it telling us anything? What does it feel like? And to me, that spiritual sense, it just stays with you, and it grows, and it grows in just the most interesting ways. And each person is their own little ecosystem of that. And so I think this is the beginning and the end of, being guided, um, in the middle. It all comes back to spirit, and it also, it starts with spirit and it comes back to spirit. And so in the beginning, you might be doing your day-to-day stuff. I'm just a normal human being. Maybe I have some ideas about God, some feeling about God, but you don't really have a real spiritual life, really. Or maybe you do, but it's not really very active. And then you start having spiritual feelings, real genuine spiritual feelings, and you start feeling inspired, um, or upset. And um, and so I would say listen to those feelings. And it's complicated, and you just keep on pulling on the thread, and it just keeps on unwinding and unwinding and bringing things into your life, all kinds of things, um, the hardest things to the easiest things, the whole thing. It starts opening up doors, opening up things. And so I think having a clear sense of that, of the spirit, and then if you can maintain, if you're lucky enough to maintain a good connection to that and a good sense of what it's telling you, you're able to ground yourself in it, that's great. And I think we should always be trying to listen to it, and perfect our ability to understand what it's telling us, and to ground ourselves in it. I think that's the ultimate goal, is to fully ground ourselves in spirit, to fully transcend, I'm going to say, our impulses, our compulsions, to fully transcend these things, and to be fully inspired by the heart of our being, the source of who we are. And and there's so much that goes into that, but it all is in this moment. How do I feel? What are my feelings telling me? You know, what is my conscience telling me? How does my environment make me feel? How do these people make me feel? How do my relationships make me feel? How does my body make me feel? How does my attitude make me feel? How do my intentions make me feel? And this all comes back to to our personal orientation to life, to the big picture, and our attitude and the way that we are relating to everything. And it all comes back to spirit. So I think spirit is upstanding, and I think spirit wants us to be upstanding, and we won't be satisfied until we are aligned with it. And that means aligning every part of who we are with it and giving ourselves to a spiritual life. And it all starts with spirit. And so when you start having those spiritual feelings, or maybe if you're doing meditations that may create those spiritual feelings because you want to have them, um, or you're talking to people about it because you're really interested, or you're just interested, what's happening is you're opening up your connection to spirit. And when you do that, its energy starts to affect your whole being. It starts to transform it. When you let it in, it starts to change it. And it's going to, like I said, push you in all different directions. But having that connection to it, being open to it, to receiving it, is essential, and is the fundamental aspect of spiritual awakening. And so when we just can sense it, we can do things actively that will deepen that relationship, and we can do things that will create resistance to it. And we also just kind of passively or spontaneously interact with it, and can deepen it. And I think for a lot of us, I think that thing just is, once it starts happening, it just keeps on going. Um, uh, but maybe it doesn't. There's up and downs. Things happen, things change. You can get on it and then get off and get back on. So um, I just think it's important to be aware of this kind of subtle process that's unfolding when you want to start the journey, or you're starting a spiritual path. And I think all it really is you're opening up the purple road, and the purple road starts to expand in your life and change your life and change who you are. um, and recognizing this, recognizing spirit, you know and it can be really, you know kind of ways that aren't obvious in the beginning, not clear, and then they slowly form into a greater sense of what spirit is. um, but just like, you can just allow yourself to feel what you do, and just be like, what's going on? It doesn't have to be any way, but what's going on? What is this telling me? It's kind of natural. And what can I do with this? What is this telling me? And so I think this is really the beginning, and it's kind of like the the stream coming to you that you need to kind of continue to drink, to continue to grow. And it's the power that takes you to where you want to be. And it's like the first step on a unique path, and all the stones of the path are made out of the same kind of rock. And so this is finding that first rock and stepping onto it, stepping onto that path, and not knowing where it's going to go, but stepping on that rock, on these stones, on is the way to go. And so I think developing a sense of that in the beginning, and allowing it to develop however it does, and being open to it developing, is kind of the beginning of the way. Um, yeah, and that can turn into a lot of different things. But I think it really just starts to awaken us up to our kind of more authentic feelings about who we are, and what we think is important, and what we want to do with our lives. It really starts to put things into perspective, um, give us a perspective that can kind of reprioritize our lives in a way that's more and more in line with what is upstanding, what is true, what is real. Yeah. So I think that's where I'm going to end. Um, in the next video, I'll talk about kind of where this leads. Um, yeah. Maybe I'll talk about something else too. We'll see. Anyway, take care. Talk to you later. Bye.